All right, in the best of series, we are up to Nashville, which means New Jersey tomorrow. Islanders actually will have a crossing, so we won't have. If you're a New Jersey or an Islanders fan, you're up for a pretty good couple of days because you're going to get best of and all that, and within a couple. Anyway, all right. I'm just trying to figure out because I'm doing the one playlist in reverse alphabetical and one in forward alphabetical, so you know they're going to cross, and it's going to happen over the next couple of days. So the Nashville Predators, when you look at the all-time best, it's kind of dicey because, again, we'll get to who the best overall team is. Best overall player, well, David Legwand, a name that makes my wife giggle incessantly, and I tell her to grow up. 566 overall points for David, 210 overall goals, 356 overall assists, and he is their all-time leading scorer. Is he their all-time best player? No. Very long-time member of the Predators. He was a number 2 draft pick. He had some very good seasons. But best overall player, I would think, goes to the guy down here with power play goals of 80, and that's Shea Weber. Penalty minutes, Jordan Tutu, 725 to lead this team in career penalty minutes. And if you're not going to like the Shea Weber pick as the best player, you might enjoy the Pekka Rinne option. Rinne, who's just too good right now, right? 359 wins, 18,561 shots against, 58 shutouts. All three of those are records for the Nashville Predators. Now, save percentage, UC Saros has a career save percentage of .918. Now, if we're talking about honorable mentions on the Nashville Predators for best player, Roman Josi deserves that mention. And Roman Josi may very well end up being the best overall Predator by the time his career's over. Forsberg, and that's Philip Forsberg, of course. Forsberg may very well threaten to knock down those totals of Legwand's before his career's done. Victor Arvidsson, one of my favorite members of the Predators. A bit of a down year for him this year, but his overall body work's pretty impressive. And he is a pretty good player. And I have to mention Mike Fischer. Mike Fischer, he and his wife, the former Carrie Underwood, now Carrie Fisher, which sounds weird because that's Princess Leia, so it's odd. But Mike Fischer, very prominent player for the Nashville Predators, who has been associated with the team for a very long time. Now, when you talk about the Predators, if you're talking about their all-time greatest, though, goaltending's been solid most of the way through. Whether it's Vokoun, pretty good goaltender, right? Vokoun, before Rinne came along, was the guy, and he was very, very good as a starting goaltender. Now, to start off their time in the NHL, Mike Dunham. Mike Dunham came over from New Jersey, and that was seen as the future for them in net. He had a pretty good little run there. And Chris Mason, who now, of course, does color commentary for the Nashville Predators. Mace was a pretty good goaltender as well. He had, didn't have the starting career of a Rinne or Vokoun or Dunham, but he still had a decent enough run in there. And, of course, Saros may very well be the starter as soon as he may be seen as the starter right now. If you're a Nashville fan, you may see him as a starter right now. You may see him as 1B, 1A option, but he's going to be the starter, and he's got a ways to go to get to 359 wins or 18,561 shots faced. Now, their best team, this is tough. I think their best team was 2017-2018, where they finished with 117 points. But they only got to round 2. And in 2017, they got to the finals as a wild card team that destroyed Chicago in the first round, which broke my bracket immediately, which I thought was kind of rude. But Nashville went on this nice run to the Stanley Cup Finals and gave Pittsburgh everything they could handle, for the most part. Rinne did struggle in his games in Pittsburgh. But I've mentioned this before. I think that Rinne's struggles were also the team struggles. I think the team in front of him was struggling in Pittsburgh as well. So, was the 2018 team or the 2017 team their best? I'll leave it to Nashville fans to make that decision. For me, it's the 2017-2018 team. They just didn't quite have the playoff success. But I understand the 2017 finalists and all the love they get as well. Columbus is the team they have the most wins against with 59, but St. Louis 58. So Columbus was in their division. Now Columbus is in the East. St. Louis is still in their division. So I would imagine St. Louis will be the team they have the most wins against. If we did this again in, say, a couple of years, it'll be St. Louis that's leading that list. Now, points percentage, Columbus shows up there with a 724 winning percentage. So they do very well against the Blue Jackets historically. May not have been all that happy to see Columbus leave their division and go to the East for that very reason. That was a team that they did very, very well against. Now, goals for against Chicago, they have the most goals, 333. So they can score well against Chicago, and I seem to remember some games between Nashville and Chicago over the past 5 years where there's been some crazy scores on both sides. But 333 goals, that's their all-time leader. Now, goals for per game, that's where Washington comes in, team from the East. 3.29 goals per game against the Washington Capitals. Kind of a bit of a surprise there because the Capitals have been a pretty darn good team throughout. Now, goals against per game against Montreal, 2.22. So they do very well against teams from the East, I guess, is the idea. And it's, again, your people are going to say, well, it's small sample size. True on some level, but they do well against Montreal and Nashville. It's not that small of a sample size since they've been around since 1997. So it's over 20 years. So it's a pretty decent sample size. Notable captains, I went with Yossi, who's the current captain. Weber. Shea Weber, who, if not for his contract, I would think would still be here, and I would think he would still be captain. The PK Subban deal, I believe, was one that they just, that Weber contract was just too long. And then they traded out Subban because they needed money. So you go from that to now Duchesne's getting all that money, and how long is it before Nashville says, oh, we got to get rid of that contract? But general managing's not the problem. Tom Fitzgerald was their first captain, deserves mention, as does Jason Arnott. Arnott was proof again of one of these guys that sometimes players get better as they get older. Arnott just seemed to keep getting better. I don't know what it was with him, but he went from a pretty good player in his 20s to an excellent player in his 30s. And by the time he got to Nashville, yeah, he was pretty consistent, pretty reliable offensively. Now, for best coach, I can't not go with Barry Trotz. I can't. And Trotz, you know, the playoff success wasn't necessarily there, and they had that under Laviolette. But Trotz was there forever, and he got the most out of some pretty bad teams as well. Trotz got, the expansion team and the just the overall generally poorly talented teams closer to the playoffs than they belonged. So no, they didn't win a Stanley Cup under Trotz. Yes, they got to a Stanley Cup final when Laviolette took over. You can make that argument, but for me, Trotz's body of work is just huge, and his ability to get the team to be better than they should have been at the start of their existence stands out. So I could understand both. If you're going with John Hines, by all means, let me know, because that's a problem. Now, best GM, I had to really go over this. Best GM, I had to go through, okay, which GM's got the most wins, which one's been around for the most games, which GM was it again that made that Forsberg trade, which GM was it? All right, it's all David Poile. David Poile's longevity in Nashville has been nothing short of fantastic. Because again, this was a team that went through its mediocrity, but they didn't have a great expansion draft. At some point, I'm going to have to do a video on expansion drafts and which players went to which teams in expansion drafts. Wanted to do that last summer, and I had a hard time getting exact lists, even with all the yearbooks I have. I'm like, come on, this isn't the exact list. This is who was left over after they made trades. But I'll find it. I know it's out there. The Wikipedia exists and other websites as well, so I can find it. But Nashville did not have a great team out of the gate. Yes, you had Mike Dunham in net. The team was not spectacular. And yet, David Poile has managed to keep them competitive. There was the one year that they went for it in the mid-2000s where it didn't quite work out, but they went for it. And so David Poile has to be the best GM. From 1997 until now, he's been their GM. Now, he was a Pred. So which players have played for the Nashville Predators that maybe we sort of forget? Devin Dubnyk was a Nashville Predator for 2 games. He was a Predator. Yeah, that's one of those ones that I guarantee there's a lot of people that may easily forget that. Wayne Simmons, who came over at the deadline and it really didn't work, so he ends up in Nashville. Or in New Jersey, I should say, out of Nashville. Peter Forsberg. So I have Forsberg over here. I clarified it was Philip because Peter Forsberg did play for them. That was when they were really going for it. Now, some people might say, well, why isn't Korea up there? Because we all kind of remember Korea was a Predator, and so I'm not going to have Korea up there. Darren Turcotte. I had forgotten Darren Turcotte finished his career as a Predator. I even had to go through his name and go through his profile and go, right, he did finish it. I had totally forgotten that Darren Turcotte, who was a pretty darn good Ranger at one point, ended up finishing out his career as Nashville Predator. I forgot all about it. Cody Hodgson, again, kind of easily forgotten between his Vancouver Buffalo being known that he ended up in Nashville. Olli Jokinen, yeah, one of the many spots for Olli Jokinen was here. Radek Bonk, yeah, Radek Bonk also played here. Bonk, who there does need to be a career video for Radek Bonk because I enjoy saying Radek Bonk. It's a very soothing name. It's a good name. Martin Jelena. Yeah, Martin Jelena was a Predator. And Andrew Burnett. Andrew Burnett, I've mentioned this before. Apparently, if you were starting up a brand new franchise, you wanted Burnett. Burnett bounced around between expansion teams a bit and put up some of his best totals. Very good expansion player. So yeah, the best of the Predators, I would say player-wise, I have to go with Shea Weber, but I'll say that by the time Yossi's career is over, Jossi is a player. In net, it's Pekka Rinne. Between Weber, Jossi, and Rinne, you guys can let me know what you think in the comment section below, as always. And best team, if you're a Preds fan, let me know, was the 2017-2018 team that finished at the top of the standings, that did so darn well and then just couldn't get past round 2 against the Winnipeg Jets. Was that a better team than 2017, or do you believe the 2017 team was better? Let me know why in the comment section as well. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. It means a lot. So remember, stay home, stay safe. Again, I know the numbers are kind of scary. At this date, on April 7th, I think we'll be looking back on them in about, I'll say 3 weeks' time, and we'll see things starting to kind of get better. Models are only models. So when you hear about the model says this, models are changing. I heard some stuff today on TV. Huge changes in some of the models, and they go, about the models. So, you know, just do what you can. Stay home. Stay as calm as possible, and we'll all get through this. Thank you guys so much for all your support, again, as always, and I will talk to you very soon.